Imagine enduring nearly 7 years of relentless persecution, threats, and harassment so surreal that even the police began to question their authenticity. The victim's credibility was so severely undermined that tragically it cost her life. In today's case, we uncover the haunting story of Cindy Hack, also known as Cindy James, who was found dead in the late 80s after pleading for police protection for years. Cynthia Elizabeth Hack, better known as Cindy, was born on June 12, 1944 in Oliver, Canada. She was the daughter of Matilda and Otto Hack and had 5 younger siblings. While there isn't much detailed information about her early life, here's what we do know. At the age of 19, she was studying nursing and working in a clinic where she met 37-year-old psychiatrist Roy Makepeace. Despite Roy being married and having 2 daughters, the two became involved. Within a few months, he divorced his wife, and in the same year, he married Cindy. Her parents did not approve the idea of their daughter marrying so young before graduation to a man twice her age and still being responsible for ending his first marriage. For them, the union started on the wrong foot. At 22, now a trained nurse, she began working as an administrator at a school for children with behavioural problems. In July 1982, after almost 20 years of marriage, Cindy, then 38, and Roy, 56, separated. Living alone in a new house with a little dog and a large garden she loved tending to, she started receiving disturbing phone calls in November of that same year. The calls warned that someone was out to get her, that she would suffer, and that it would be better if she died. Sometimes the phone would ring, and when she answered, there was silence. These calls occurred at different times of the day, on various days, and they were made by different people with different content. Sometimes they whispered, sometimes they spoke quietly. She confided in friends, family, and even sought help from the police. On one occasion, while the police were at her house, the phone rang. She answered, but there was silence before the caller hung up a few seconds later. All the calls were too short for the police to trace. Many believed her ex-husband was involved, but she insisted it couldn't be him. They had separated amicably, remained in touch, and he was one of the people urging her to contact the police as quickly as possible. Following these incidents, the police tapped Cindy's phone and managed to record some calls, which as always were short. One of these calls was published, while the rest were never released. This particular call was quite dark. Things started to get even scarier when she began receiving threatening notes. They were crafted from cut-out letters from magazines and newspapers, and sometimes in block letters drawn with rulers. Some also included photos. In one of them, it was possible to see 3 images: a knife, in the other what appeared to be a body on the ground, and the third a hand holding someone's neck, accompanied by the phrase, "I see you." Other notes were more disturbing, like photos of dead animals, sometimes decapitated. In addition, she received other things such as spoiled meat, shoe boxes filled with feces, photos of bodies in a morgue, and on one occasion, 3 dead cats were hung in a tree in front of her house. One night, Cindy heard someone walking around her house and the sound of porch lights being broken. She immediately picked up the phone to call for help, but there was no signal. In other words, the line had been cut. She was in complete despair and believed that the intruder was going to break into the house, but nothing else happened. The person left without incident. She couldn't sleep that night, and the next day she noticed that the porch chairs were scattered and her trash was overturned. The case files contain copies of Cindy's diary and a page dated December 1982 that reads, I can't take the life I'm leading anymore. All I wanted most was peace and a life where I could follow my dreams and be myself. I feel like I no longer have a life. I don't want anything anymore. And my days and nights are filled with fear. I just wish I could have a calm day and not feel watched. When I think about who could want me harm, I can't think of anyone. But when I try to imagine who could be behind all these threats, they all cross my mind. Am I going crazy? Is this a nightmare? How could this be happening? The following year, in January 1983, Agnes Woodcock, her neighbour, went to visit her, and when she knocked on the door, no one answered. She assumed that Cindy was taking a shower, so she decided to go around the house to inform her through the bathroom window that she was waiting at the door. But when she arrived in the backyard, she found her almost unconscious with a black pantyhose tied around her neck. At the hospital and with the police, she tried to explain what happened, but that didn't help much. She explained with great difficulty that she went to the backyard to get a box to organise some things at home, and suddenly a man grabbed by the neck from behind. She bent down to try to get out of his arms, and she could see that he was wearing a pair of white sneakers. After that, she passed out. It is believed that Agnes arrived at the exact moment she was attacked, and luckily prevented this man from taking her life. After these events, her fear only increased. She moved, dyed her hair, changed the colour of her car, and even requested a name change from the court. Although this wasn't initially authorised, she was granted an exception due to her ongoing legal separation from Roy Makepeace, allowing her to choose a new surname, James. Unfortunately, these measures provided no relief. At the end of that same month, on the night of January 27, 1983, she was arriving at her new home after a long day of work when she was attacked at her doorstep. A man grabbed her from behind and threatened her with a knife to her throat, warning that if she went to the police again, he would kill her, then her sister, and then her mother. She wasn't intimidated and went to the police, explained everything, but they couldn't find any clues or suspects. They began to suspect that she was making it all up. That same year, one of the police officers handling her case, Pat McBride, grew closer to Cindy, whether out of genuine affection or a sense of duty is unclear, and they even had a brief relationship. While the relationship lasted, she felt safe, but it ended amicably, with Pat keeping a copy of her house key with her authorization for emergencies. After that, she decided to hire a private detective named Ozzy Caban, who was recommended by her ex-police boyfriend. The detective even installed some listening devices in her house so that he could monitor any activity in the house remotely. On January 30th, 1984, he heard some strange noises in the house, like objects being dropped, nothing that sounded like a robbery, but he still decided to check. When he arrived, he knocked on the door, but no one answered. He then decided to look through the window. He saw Cindy lying on the living room floor, unconscious with a knife stabbed through her hand, pinning her to the floor. He broke down the door, and when he got close, he saw that between her hand and the knife, there was a note that read, "Dead soon." He immediately called 911. At the hospital, once again, she was questioned and struggled to give details. She remembered she was at the front door tidying up the porch when she noticed a man coming quickly next to her. He hit her on her head with a piece of wood, dragged her into the house, and then she passed out. Due to the vague nature of Cindy's information and the impression that she might be withholding details, the police asked her to take a lie detector test. Surprisingly, the results were inconclusive, with repeated questions yielding inconsistent answers. The police grew increasingly skeptical of her claims. Once home, she confided in her friend Agnes and ended up coming to a conclusion. She didn't think the man wanted to kill her. Instead, she believed he wanted to scare and terrify her so that she would live in fear and get crazy. Despite her efforts to rationalize the situation, she couldn't find any logical explanation for what was happening. The police began surveilling her nearly 24 hours a day, with 14 officers on patrol for over a month. Unfortunately, their presence wasn't undercover, so no suspects were ever seen. Cindy's parents stated that it was obvious that no one would show up, while police cars were parked across the street. The police developed two theories. One suggested she was suffering from a split personality, attacking herself while thinking she was someone else. The other suggested she was seeking attention. On June 18th, she found her dog in terrible condition, as if it had been the victim of an attack. It had a pantyhose tied around its neck and had several cuts on its body. She became desperate and called the police, who continued to support their theories. She didn't know what else to do. But on December 11th, 1985, Cindy was found unconscious in a manhole on a road that was 10 kilometers from her home. She was wearing men's boots several sizes too large and suffering from hypothermia. Cuts and bruises covered her body, and on top of all that, a black pantyhose was tied around her neck. Once again, she couldn't remember anything. The police increasingly believed in the dual personality theory. They shifted their investigation from attempted murder to attempted suicide. Determined to prove she wasn't suffering from mental illness, she voluntarily sought psychiatric help for monitoring. Cindy's friend, Agnes, along with her husband Tom, started to sleep at her house for a few days to help her if anything happened, and one night she woke them both up in the middle of the night saying she had heard something. The three of them went to investigate and immediately saw smoke upon opening the door, realizing the basement was on fire. Cindy tried to call the firefighters, but the phone was dead. They rushed to a neighbor's house to use their phone. Once outside, Tom spotted a man in a hoodie watching the house. When Tom tried to approach, the man ran off and disappeared. They couldn't catch him. The police, once again based on their theory, thought that Cindy, with her dual personality, set fire to her own house. But now they had Tom as a witness to confirm that there was a real suspect. Cindy's psychiatrist, Alan Connolly, decided to place her in intensive care, fearing her intense fear might make her a danger to herself. She was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Within the first few weeks, 2 psychiatrists diagnosed her with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and psychosis. This diagnosis was distressing for her, who firmly believed she was the victim of a stalker. After 10 weeks of medical monitoring and medication, Cindy was released from the hospital. Back home, she confided in her friend Agnes during a visit, hinting that she knew what was happening but couldn't say anything. She said, "If the police can't do anything, I'll do it myself. This will all end, and when it's over, I'll explain everything to you, but I can't say anything now." From 1986 to 1989, the harassment continued. Calls, letters, dead animals, broken light bulbs and everything, but no one believed her anymore. On May 25th, 1989, almost 7 years after the first call, Cindy didn't show up at Agnes's house for her son's birthday, which was supposed to happen after noon. It was an outdoor children's party. Agnes, worried, went to her house but couldn't find her. Even though she knew that the police no longer believed Cindy's stories, she still reported her missing. The police reluctantly began a search, and that same night, her car was found parked in a neighborhood park. Inside the car were some shopping bags with gifts. There was blood on the driver's door handle and her wallet was under the car. The police searched the nearby area but couldn't find her. In the days that followed, Cindy's photo was circulated around the city. 2 weeks later, in June 1989, at the age of 44, she was found at the back of an abandoned house, lifeless. Her arms and legs were tied together, facing backwards and once again, and a black pantyhose was tied very tightly around her neck. The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was an overdose of morphine and benzodiazepine, with doses of these medications 10 times above the maximum limit that the human body can withstand. Despite the circumstances, the police wanted to believe that she had taken her own life, but the family questioned, how could it be suicide if Cindy's hands and feet were tied behind her? The police argued that these medications take around 10 to 30 minutes to react. If she took the drugs and started tying herself up at the same time, she would have had at least 10 minutes to set up the scene, that is, enough time. However, this argument seemed flawed. It appeared the police wanted to close the case quickly, as their theory lacked evidence. No syringes or medicine boxes were found near her. Additionally, her body was bruised, with cuts and injuries similar to those she had when found on the road years ago. The family argued against that, claiming that Cindy was a very proud person, and that if for any reason she wanted to take her own life, she would have done it at home, next to her dog, in her bed and very well dressed, but never in the horrendous way which she was found, and especially not behind an abandoned house. Despite Cindy's long years of reporting the persecution, the police disbelieved her version of events. Even though they had several threatening recordings made at her house, it seemed they just wanted to close the case quickly, blaming the victim. The family had to go to court to ensure a proper investigation was conducted, and they succeeded. A new team began analysing the case, and the following suspects were considered. 1. Roy, the ex-husband, was considered suspicious due to his profession as a psychiatrist, his access to the medications found in her, and his potential knowledge of how to manipulate someone's mind. 2. Pat McBride, police officer and Cindy's ex-boyfriend, was considered suspicious for having shown interest in her and for having access to the house. Being a police officer, he would know how to continue with the threats without being caught. 3. The unidentified man in front of her house the night the fire started, but no one was ever able to find out who this person was. And the 4th suspect, Cindy herself. She could be faking everything for attention, or because she suffers from a double personality. During the hearings, the police reinforced the idea that Cindy had injected herself with the drugs, discarded the needle and syringe far from where she was found, and tied her own hands and feet behind her back. To support this theory, an officer demonstrated in court that it was possible to tie one's own hands and feet behind their back. Ozzy, Cindy's private detective, refuted the thesis, claiming the knots made there were not the same as those found on Cindy, and that he did it without using the high doses of medication that were found in the victim's body. Under such circumstances, she might not have been able to do what the officer demonstrated. Unfortunately, after months of investigation and trial that aimed at determining a culprit, the court ended up reaching a very unusual conclusion. There was evidence suggesting Cindy's death could have been caused by both homicide and suicide, so they declared the cause of her death as undetermined. Cindy's parents passed away without ever finding out what really happened to their daughter, and unfortunately, it seems that we will never know either.